Hello and welcome to the Vally of Shadows Paranormal Podcast. I am your host Matt, and in this video we will be going over the Harlingen Haunted Insane Asylum. This place was used a while ago, but is now deserted. Supposedly, if you go there at night, you can hear people screaming and people walking around. Many people had died there, so maybe there's ghosts walking around. Who knows? Could be a Takwachi or something. This will be another chapter from the book of Ghosts of the Rio Grande Valley by David Bowles. We'll be going over the history, the lore, and the legend itself that has to do with the Harlingen Insane Asylum. I personally have never been there myself, but maybe I might visit in the future, maybe along with my co-host Kat. We possibly have a collaboration with another YouTuber from the area, so that's going to be fun. You can see how that goes. That may be more future content for you guys. They are, in the traditional sense, they do the ghost hunting. They go to the location and they do all that great stuff, with the EVPs, talking to them, just capturing all that crazy stuff, the typical ghost hunting. So that's some great news for the future. Looking forward to it, like I said. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into this. The Harlingen Insane Asylum. The history. At the crossroads of US Highway 77 and 83, just 30 miles from the coast, a lawyer founded a town with a very strange name, Harlingen, whose namesake is a coastal community in the Netherlands. Called the Chief because of his indigenous features and long hair, which he attributed to Choctaw ancestry. Leonidas Lawn Hill strategically selected this location, then the junction of two railway lines, with an eye towards establishing a center of industry, distribution, and shipping. For a time, his small settlement was known as Six Shooter Junction, because the only Anglos who lived there were Texas Rangers, officers of the Border Patrol, and the Hill family, who housed the law enforcement personnel in their own barn and corrals. Though Lawn Hill was known as a lunatic for wanting to establish a settlement in the midst of an area prone to flooding, within a decade, Harlingen had grown into a vibrant and essential part of the fabric of the valley. Of course, creation is continually balanced by destruction, and the tragedies of all growing towns were visited on Harlingen. To this day, residents report inexplicable apparitions tied to the sites of uncommon death. Dishman elementary teachers, for example, tell of a student who in the 1960s was beaten to death by a classmate in the girls' restroom. Dedicated instructors working late to plan the following day's lesson have heard whimpers and cries coming from the last stall as lights flicker and a coldness spreads. Memorial Middle School staff and students affirm is also haunted by two girls who died there under mysterious and questionable circumstances. Custodians tell of seeing ghostly forms floating sadly in remote corners of the building. A couple of roads themselves are reported haunted. On Moth Street, a little girl wanders sobbing with her head down, seeming lost. She will not reply when spoken to, though she will occasionally look up at anyone who has drifted close, despair filling her eyes before she suddenly vanishes. Nearby, on Shirley Street, another girl haunts the house that fronts the canal where she apparently drowned. Stories tell of mysterious women in white awaiting her at the edge of the water. But when we think of hauntings in Harlingen, one sight commands a sense of real awe and fear: the so-called Harlingen Insane Asylum. So there's a little back history there into Harlingen and all the hauntings itself there. It seems there's a lot going on in Harlingen. Maybe a little bit more I need to look into myself. Now let's get into the lore. Always forward thinking, the leaders of Harlingen began in the late 1930s to attempt to draw attention to their town as the site of a commercial airport center. These efforts led to interest on the part of the U.S. War Department, and in 1941 the government committed to establish the Harlingen Army Airfield on the outskirts of town. One of the buildings erected on the base was a hospital that served the soldiers and the pilots living and training there. When in 1962, the state of Texas began searching for a place to provide care for people of the Rio Grande Valley who had been released from the care of the mental health wing of the San Antonio State Hospital. It hit upon the idea of leasing space at the airfield, by then known as the Harlingen Air Force Base, and slated for closure by President Kennedy. The idea was to eventually move into the Air Base Hospital. Until the base completely shut down, however, the Harlingen Adult Mental Health Clinic, as it has been named, was temporarily housed in a line shack near one of the runways. 6 staff members cared for patients in that cramped space until the following year, when services were moved into the hospital, the Harlingen State Mental Health Clinic, as it was renamed in 1965, provided outpatient care to adults with mental health or addiction issues. Within a few years, a wing of 20 beds was added so that people with severe, around-the-clock needs could be properly attended to. Legend has it that not everyone got better. In fact, some in the community believe that a few patients died, leaving their restless souls to shamble around the grounds as they once did in life. Now let's get into the legend. The Vietnam War produced more than one kind of casualty. Petty Officer Thomas Cortez was on his first tour of duty aboard USS McKinley, the flagship of the 7th Fleet Amphibious Force, when he received a Dear John letter from his lover, Jacob Franklin. Jake could not bear the weight, the doubt, the worry. Better the two break off their relationship, he said. Better for them both. Tom dealt with this news very badly, getting drunk while on duty and making ridiculous errors in the personal report he typed up as a result. But his biggest mistake was coming on to Seaman Bobby Lezama, a burly young Cuban whom Tom found very attractive. Unfortunately for them both, Chief Petty Officer Knapp walked in on their tryst. This was the U.S. Navy in the year 1967. Homosexuality was not openly condoned, and Knapp was especially intolerant. Both men were given dishonorable discharge and sent home. 21-year-old Thomas found himself living with his parents again in Mercedes, Texas. It did not take long for them to discover the reason for their son's return, and the devout Catholic couple was predictably appalled. Tom's elder brother, married and father to 3 toddlers, threatened to give him a beating if he did not get some help for his condition. In order to avoid problems and to have the use of his father's car, Tom agreed to meet regularly with the family priest. Grappling with the divide between his own happiness and the sin his loved ones condemned him for, Tom began slipping into depression and drinking excessively. One day he showed up at Our Lady of Mercy in such a state of inebriation that Father Collar had to call his parents to pick him up. His family members were unanimous. Tom had too much time on his hands and needed gainful employ. They gave him 1 month to find at least part-time work. One day, while out looking for a job opening, Tom happened to drive by the restaurant where Jake worked. His chest aching with nerves and longing, he decided to stop and say hello. Jake smiled, wiping his hands on his apron. "Hey, it's good to see you, Thomas. Wait for me out back, yeah? I got a break in about 10 minutes. Leaning against the alley wall, they shared a cigarette and got each other caught up. Jake had dropped out of Pan American College to take care of his ailing mother, and Tom was sorry to see the young man's dreams put on hold. "Oh man, that's too bad," Jake remarked, when Tom had finished relating his own bad luck. "Tough enough to make it in this messed up society as it is, without your parents breathing down your neck. Yeah, well, I should have known better." Jake passed Tom what remained of the smoke, and their hands touched for a moment. They both felt the jolt. The spark they had once felt was still glowing. By the time Jake had to go back on the clock, they had arranged to meet up that weekend for drinks. Before long, the two began seeing each other seriously again. Jake helped Tom find work in his uncle's insurance office, and the Cortez family relaxed in their worry about him. Life settled into an idyllic, secretive routine. There were few places in the valley for gay men and women to be themselves, but they existed nonetheless. Small bastions of hope and freedom in the heart of a severely conservative wilderness. The couple discovered their attraction was deepening into love. They began to make tentative plans, to think about leaving South Texas to seek belongings elsewhere. Giddy with the future, they became careless. One night, Tom slipped into his old habit and had entirely too much to drink. Jake insisted on taking his keys and driving him home. It was late when he helped his stumbling lover through the back door of his parents' home and into his bedroom. "Stay with me," Tom slurred. "Just a little while." Shushing him before anyone was awakened, Jake agreed. Rough hands pulled Jake from the bed, and a few hours later, as he opened his eyes, he saw Mr. and Mrs. Cortez, face twisted in anger and disgust. Spitting horrible insults, Miss Cortez rounded the bed and slapped her son awake. "Desgraciado," she wheezed. "How dare you bring him into this house? Ay Dios mío, such perversion under this decent roof." Jake pulled himself to his feet. "It's not what you think, ma'am. We had a little too much to drink, and I just slept it off." Hand to his reddened cheek, Tom sat up and eyed his parents with fury and shame. "Can't you knock? This is my room." "You know this is our house," his father gritted. "And you know the rules. You swore you were getting help." Tom shook his head. "I don't need help. I need Jake. I love him." Miss Cortez crossed herself with a moan, looking up to heaven. Mr. Cortez turned to the young Anglo-man. "You need to leave now." Jake looked at Tom, gesturing for him to be calm, but it was too late. "Then I'm leaving too," he said, yanking the sheets away. "No," his mother yelled. "Not until we talk. I'll call Father Collar and we'll help you get this demon inside you under control." "The hell you will." As Jake still hadn't moved to leave, Miss Cortez began to force him from the room. "I said get out." "Tom, I'm going," Jake called as he stepped through the door. "Don't freak out. Let them calm down. We'll figure this out later." Rubbing tears from his eyes, Tom nodded. Okay. See you soon." Jake left the house, staring back over his shoulder and shaking his head in dismay. It was a hard world, but somehow, he swore the two of them would find happiness. The Cortez family had other plans. Colluding with their older son and their priest, Tom's parents had him committed to the Harlingen State Mental Health Clinic, which had just added 20 beds in order to allow patients with extreme needs to remain in the institution around the clock. Tom had to be dragged bodily inside. He railed against the orderlies, he spat out the tranquilizers. Over the course of a week, he tried every deceit imaginable to catch his captors off guard and escape. Nothing worked. The doctors and nurses refused to listen to his pleas. The orderlies strapped him down at night and forced mind-numbing drugs down his throat during the day. Existence became a haze, except for a moment of frightened clarity. "I have to see him," he would scream at such times, "even if it's just to say goodbye." Electroshock therapy was next, but not even the spasm-inducing jolts of energy could erase his briefet longing. Finally, after a particularly vicious outbreak, Tom was strapped into a straitjacket and placed in solitary confinement. Broken by despair, mistreatment, and antipsychotic drugs, he managed to struggle free of his restraints and used the garment to hang himself. The orderly who entered later that day found the former sailor dead. As Mr. and Mrs. Cortez were receiving the tragic news by phone, Jacob Franklin was smoking a cigarette in the alley behind the restaurant at that magic hour of the day, right before the sky edged from a pastel pink and blue to the darker shades of the evening. You cannot understand why Tom had not contacted him. Every attempt he had made, a calling or a dropping by the Cortez home, had ended badly. Tom's elder brother had threatened to smash his face in if he did not leave them all alone. Jake would not believe the lies they told him about how Tom felt nothing for him and was getting professional help to rid himself of his sinful habits. They had made vows, silly little promises whispered under the moon. They were bound to each other. Sighing heavily, Jake turned to go back inside when a silhouette caught his eye. Squinting against the failing golden light, he saw that it was Tom. "Oh my God," he cried, rushing towards his lover. "Where have you been?" "Stop, Jake." The voice was like a tortured echo. "I don't have long." Tom's eyes were full of darkness. Jake realized he could see the cross street behind the man, misty and out of focus, but visible all the same, through his insubstantial body. "What's happening, Tom? You're scaring me." "They locked me away. Told me I'd never see you again. Put me full of drugs. Forgive me, love. There was no choice. I had to see you one last time." There were ligature marks on the fading flesh of his neck. The truth was clear. Thomas Cortez was dead. This was his ghost. "Oh, you stupid boy. What did you do? What did you do?" I love you, Jake. It was worth it, just to look into your eyes, even if we can't touch. I love you. Then the phantom was jerked backwards with a rushing sound, and the alley was empty once more. Jacob Franklin fell to his knees and sobbing his heart out as night slowly fell. They say that Tom was not the first or the last to die in that place. Others took their lives as well, or lost them at the hands of the people charged with saving them. Now those souls, abandoned and forgotten, wander the grounds aimlessly with rage. If you slow down as you drive by on a moonlit night and let your windows down, you can hear the raged chorus of their desperate screams echoing eternally. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the legend, the lore, the history of the Harlingen supposed haunted insane asylum. Overall, I thought it was a great story. The legend itself, I mean, Harlingen has a lot to offer apparently, which is very, very interesting. I want to go ahead and look up a lot of those stories and legends in the area, and I'll definitely try to deliver that to you guys ASAP. But I just want to thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate all the likes and subscribers that have joined lately. I really appreciate it. Everything's been going up steadily, and it's showing all the progress, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And I just really, at the bottom of my heart, thank everyone for supporting this channel. And if you can, give this one a like, and if you haven't, please subscribe. And until next time, guys, here on the Valley of Shadows Paranormal Podcast.